Republican Party, my party, drafted an email, cut and pasted it for various sheriffs to sign, and then emailed it out to their database and invited you to respond back to the SCGOP, Team SCGOP, I think it is. And I don't understand why, but in any event, I'm going to take up the things that they said in that email because they're making their closing argument, right? They're laying out, these are the reasons why you shouldn't vote for this bill. The first one is they say, marijuana, I'm going to quote, marijuana is an illegal substance. I can't endorse, and I being the sheriff who was at the end of the email, can't endorse or even ignore the attempt to provide relief through illegal methods. All right, so the first thing I'm going to talk about is illegal. Okay, what is legal? What are we authorized to do? What do we have the power as a state to do? And just part of this is res ipsa. The thing speaks for itself. You've got 36 states, about to become 37 states that have passed it. Okay, so there is legal authority, but I'm going to break it down in detail. The second thing is they say marijuana is not medicine. Marijuana is based on legitimate research and science, not politics and not feelings. Well, that's true. I mean, medicine is based on legitimate research and science, and I'm going to go through for each of the qualifying conditions and share with you peer-reviewed medical studies that show how it can be efficacious in regard to treating certain conditions. So I'm going to go to the science. I'm going to go to the legitimate research. I'm not going to do politics and feelings, which I would submit to you is what this email is, okay? Thirdly, and this is perhaps the most outrageous misstatement, impaired driving will only further exacerbate if medical marijuana is legalized. And the reason I say that's outrageous is there have been numerous studies, even by the Department of Transportation, that clearly shows that in states that have legalized cannabis for medicinal purposes, fatalities go down, impaired driving goes down. Okay, that's not, I mean, that's science, that's research. And the reason is that alcohol and cannabis are substitute goods, okay? So many people treat or drink alcohol to mitigate or compensate for conditions, and it's just empirically true, and we'll get into the science of that. A person who is drunk on alcohol is more dangerous behind the wheel than somebody who is under the influence of cannabis. That's just a fact, and the statistics bear that out. So I'm not sure where that line where that comes from, that impaired driving will increase if medical marijuana is legalized. All the studies, which I'll go through, 5 or 6 of them, shows just the opposite. Next, they say marijuana-based companies largely operate in cash only. So these businesses are more susceptible to armed robberies. I mean, again, that's just false. We have experience in states that have had medical cannabis laws. We know what the research, we know what the empirical findings are. And they go down. They go down because of the security that's associated with dispensaries. There's not an increase in crimes. There's a decrease. I'll show you that data. It's not just me saying it. It's what the data shows, the report that the studies show. Collecting and remitting taxes based on proceeds that stem from the sale of federally illegal products is problematic. I'm not sure what they mean by problematic, but I'm going to go through the IRS regs that have been issued to provide specific guidance to cannabis industry, cannabis companies, on how they can report their taxes, what are legitimate deductions in terms of expenses. I mean, the IRS is providing guidance. I mean, they give safe harbors to these cannabis establishments that if you do this, you're fine with us. I'm not sure why collecting and remitting taxes based on proceeds that stem from the sale of federally illegal products is problematic. I don't understand what that means. But I'll talk about those studies that show that there's not an increased robberies. I mean, that is not problematic. Then it says, in a time where law enforcement officers are facing more hatred, mistrust, and even threats to defund and get rid of us, we need support now more than ever. Okay, so now we're completely into political buzzword world with defund the police. So defund the police is being brought into this. So I'm going to go through, and this won't come as any surprise to the senator from Spartanburg who chairs that Subcommittee on Finance for Law Enforcement, but I'm going to show how the recurring appropriations of the last 10 years have gone like that, okay? So if we're defunding the police, and if we don't respect the police, we have a funny way of showing it here in South Carolina, okay? And then lastly, well, let's just get into the meat of it now. First, I want to talk about legality of acting. And Senator from Charleston, Senator Campson, I drafted this particular part of my floor argument with you in mind most of all, because you're somebody, I'm not saying the rest of the body isn't, but you're somebody in particular that wants to get, nail down what is the state of the law? What are we allowed to do? What are we not allowed to do? I mean, very, very precise in terms of how you approach things. And so I want to talk about the Controlled Substances Act that was passed. And the argument has been made by Chief Keel and others that the Controlled Substances Act has preempted the field and that states can't act. Well, the first way to rebut that is by looking at the language of the CSA itself. It reads as follows: no provisions of this act shall be construed as indicating an intent on the part of Congress to occupy the field in which that provision operates, including penalties, to the exclusion of any state law on the same subject matter. So on its face, the Controlled Substances Act says we're not preempting here. We're not preempting. We're inviting states to also speak in regard to this matter. So there's no express preemption. That's clear. But that's not enough. You've then got two others. You've got an obstacle preemption analysis, okay? And if you can show that there is a conflict between the state and federal law that either creates an obstacle to federal law or makes it physically impossible to comply with both the state and federal law, then that's obstacle preemption and impossibility preemption. And neither obtains here. And the case that's cited almost in every instance when the issue arises comes out of Arizona.